Have you ever noticed how your mind no longer cuts through anything? Not thoughts, not fears, not intentions, not even the silence you once trusted? There are moments when you try to anchor your attention in a single direction, but the instant you reach for it, your focus slides away like metal slipping from weakened fingers, leaving behind only the sensation of an inner blade that no longer responds to its wielder. You feel it more often than you admit. That subtle sense that something inside you, something you once relied on, has grown dull. A quiet erosion of presence, a thinning of will, a fading of that inner force that used to move through your chest with clarity and purpose. It doesn't matter how many times you tell yourself you'll try harder tomorrow, because tomorrow arrives carrying the same fragmentation, the same static, the same invisible weight pressing against your temples like fog that never lifts. And perhaps nobody ever taught you to recognize this moment. Nobody explained that losing your focus is not merely a lapse of discipline, not a flaw in personality, not a sign of weakness. It is a fracture, a disconnection, a small but devastating distance between your mind and the laws that once governed it from within. The world around you pulls, pushes, flashes, vibrates, and demands, but the inner architecture that once held you steady is no longer aligned with your truth. Your mind has become a labyrinth of half-open doors, a storm of ideas with no center, a blade without edge. You scroll, you switch tasks, you chase small bursts of stimulation trying to feel alive for just a second, but every micro-pleasure drains more of your inner strength, leaving you with less grounding than before. It's not that you lack discipline, it's not that you lack intelligence, it's not that you lack potential. What you lack is alignment, direction, coherence, the subtle vibration of inner order that turns mere intentions into lived reality. And the truth that most people never see is this: focus is not fuel, focus is structure. The mind does not obey force, it obeys alignment. A dull blade will not cut, no matter how tightly you grip it. Your chaos is not who you are, it is the residue of a mind that forgot its own laws. A mind that was never meant to be pulled in 1,000 directions by a world engineered to fragment you. A mind that has been drained not by failure, but by friction, constant, invisible friction, against everything that steals your clarity without asking permission. But a question rises here, quietly yet relentlessly. How long will you let your mind be shaped by forces that neither know you nor serve you? Because something within you remembers, something deep, ancient, unbroken. Something that existed long before distraction became the rhythm of the modern world. And that something has not disappeared. It has merely been buried, waiting for the moment when you would have the courage to notice its absence. Here is the truth that marks the beginning of your return. The blade is not dead. It is only waiting to be reforged. Your focus did not abandon you. You simply stepped away from the laws that once held your mind sharp, present, and sovereign. But those laws never left. They have always been waiting for the moment when you would stop fighting against yourself and remember that clarity is not a state, it is a code. Today is the moment you begin to reclaim that code, not through strain, not through force, not through desperate attempts to stay productive, but through the conscious restoration of the internal structure that once gave you direction, strength, rhythm, and purpose. Everything begins with a single realization. You cannot navigate life with a blade that has lost its edge. So ask yourself, with honesty and weight, when did your blade begin to dull? What moment, what habit, what silence broken, what fracture marked the beginning of your inner dispersion? Because the answer to that question is not just a memory. It is your first doorway, and we cross that doorway in the next block. Perhaps no one has ever truly seen what you carry. Perhaps you've walked for years with questions no one could answer. You did not find this message by accident. Messages like this are not pushed. They are pulled by the resonance within you. And if something in these words touched you, if it felt more like a remembrance than information, then it means the key was always inside you. We are about to reveal what has been waiting for you all along. And from this moment, there is no turning back. If something vibrated inside you, tap like, right now. That gesture is your, I am here. A signal that you are listening with the soul, not just the mind. And through this simple act, other seekers, just like you, will find their way home. And if you are ready to walk further, touch the subscribe symbol and join this living temple of conscious creators rewriting reality at its source. There is a moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when your mind stops being a home and becomes a hallway, a corridor of half-formed thoughts, half-finished intentions, half-lived days. You try to rest inside yourself, but the moment you arrive, something pulls you away again, scattering your attention across 1,000 invisible demands. You know this feeling. It's the strange dissonance of being alive yet never fully present, the sensation of thinking in 10 directions at once yet moving in none, the quiet exhaustion of waking up already tired because your mind never truly stopped running during the night. A chaotic mind is not loud. A chaotic mind is hollow. It echoes. You sit down to focus, your body ready, your intention clear, yet within seconds the mind slips sideways, chasing a notification, a memory, a fear, a possibility, a fantasy, a fragment. Your awareness splinters into a dozen directions, and by the time you return, the moment has already decayed. And beneath everything, there is a feeling you rarely admit, the sense that you're slowly losing yourself, not visibly, not dramatically, but quietly, in the small spaces where your strength used to live. What most people never realize is that distraction is not random. It is patterned. It is rhythmic. It is engineered. Your mind was not built to receive the full force of the world's noise, every vibration, every demand, every signal competing for your inner fire. When the external world moves faster than your internal rhythm, your psyche enters a state of fragmentation, trying to keep up with currents that were never meant to be followed. This is why your energy leaks. This is why your will dissolves. This is why even simple tasks feel like climbing uphill through water. A chaotic mind is not weak. It is overwhelmed. It is overloaded by invisible forces that constantly pull it outward, away from its own center, away from its own gravity. The modern world doesn't steal your focus through force. It steals it through volume, by feeding you more information than your consciousness was designed to metabolize. You end up living in a perpetual state of almost starting, almost finishing, almost returning to who you once were. The Hermetic texts describe this state as the dilution of mental force, a thinning of the inner field, where the energy of intention becomes too scattered to manifest into anything tangible. When your mental field weakens, everything else weakens with it. Your discipline, your decisions, your emotional stability, your sense of direction. You begin to mistake noise for urgency. You mistake speed for progress. You mistake exhaustion for effort. And somewhere inside you, something starts to whisper, "This is not who I am. This is not how my mind used to feel. This is not the life I came here to live." But this whisper is not a complaint. It is a memory of coherence, a memory of inner order, a memory of the time when your mind was a blade, not a broken compass. And this memory is not fading, it is awakening, because the deeper truth is this: a fractured mind is not a prison. It is a signal, a sign that your consciousness is ready to reclaim its original rhythm, its original sharpness, its original sovereignty. The chaos is not your enemy. The chaos is the evidence that your inner laws are calling you back. And in the next block, we begin the restoration, not through discipline, not through pressure, but through the first Hermetic code that reorders the entire mental field from the inside out. But before we step into that revelation, pause and notice. Does your mind feel like a labyrinth because it's broken, or because you have never been taught how to walk within it? The answer becomes clear in the next passage. If your inner voice recognized itself in these words, know this: you are not lost, and you are not late. You are simply awakening to the architecture of your own mind. In the pinned link, there is a free portal waiting for you, a guide that expands this journey and gives structure to what you are starting to remember. Enter it when you're ready. The path opens for those who step. There is a moment in every seeker's journey when the truth stops whispering and begins to confront, a point where you can no longer treat distraction as a minor inconvenience, nor call your lack of focus a bad habit. The deeper you walk into your own inner landscape, the clearer it becomes that something is feeding on your attention, quietly, relentlessly, and with astonishing precision. And it is not a creature of myth. It is not a demon or an external force hiding in the shadows of your life. It is far more intimate than that. So close, so woven into your day that you stopped seeing it. The invisible predator is the pattern that steals your mind before you realize it's gone. It waits in the space between one thought and the next, slipping into the moment when your intention loosens and your awareness widens. It seizes the gap, injects noise, and reroutes your attention toward something shallow, something urgent-looking, something empty. Every time you drift into autopilot, every time you reach for your phone without thinking, every time you open a new tab with no purpose, every time you abandon what matters for what's easy, that is the predator feeding. Not on your time, on your life force, on your inner fire, on the very substance of your consciousness. It does not roar, it does not chase, it does not threaten. It simply consumes whatever you do not guard, because the predator does not hunt aggressively. It hunts passively. It feeds on the mind that forgets itself. The Hermetic teachings describe this as the dissolution field, a vibrational environment where unguarded minds are slowly drained until they no longer possess the will to direct their own reality. And the terrifying part is that you feel it happening. You feel your presence leaking through 1,000 microfractures. When you start a task and abandon it, when you plan your day and never follow it, when you tell yourself just 5 minutes and lose an hour, when your mind spirals into noise even in the middle of silence, none of this is random. All of it is patterned. All of it follows a rhythm of weakening, a rhythm that keeps you tired, distracted, scattered, and emotionally unstable enough to be predictable. The predator doesn't want your destruction. It wants your incoherence. Because a coherent mind is dangerous. A coherent mind can see patterns. A coherent mind can choose. A coherent mind becomes self-directed, sovereign and ungovernable by external noise. And there is a moment, often frightening, often disorienting, where you realize you have never been fighting distraction. You have been fighting for custody of your own consciousness. This is the real conflict. Not productivity, not discipline, not motivation. Sovereignty, the right to inhabit your own mind without being hijacked by unconscious rhythms that do not belong to you. But here lies the turning point. The predator is not powerful. It is only fast. It wins because you hesitate. It feeds because you leave the door open. It rules because you forgot the structure that once made your attention impenetrable. And this is where the Hermetic path changes everything. Because the moment you name the enemy, the moment you see the pattern that feeds on you, its illusion collapses. What once felt like an unstoppable force reveals itself for what it is: a habit without a master, a rhythm without awareness, a pattern without intention. And patterns can be broken, rhythms can be rewritten, minds can be reclaimed. In the next block, we begin the reversal. We step into the first Hermetic code, the Mentalism alignment, the foundational shift that turns your scattered awareness into a blade once more. But to cross that threshold, you must first ask yourself, what steals your attention the fastest? Because the predator's favorite doorway is the one you refuse to close. There is a moment in every inner journey when the conflict becomes too clear to ignore. The fractured mind, the invisible predator, the slow erosion of presence. And then, suddenly, something inside you demands order, demands coherence, demands a return to the original architecture of your consciousness. This is where the Hermetic path truly begins. Because long before you learn how to focus, long before discipline becomes natural, long before your life regains clarity, there is a single law that reorganizes everything from the inside out: the principle of mentalism. Not as a mystical idea, not as a poetic metaphor, but as a structural law of reality. All things begin in the mind. All direction begins with intention. All manifestation begins with precise thought. Your inner blade doesn't become sharp by effort. It becomes sharp by alignment. And mentalism is the law that determines the direction in which your energy flows. If your mind points nowhere, your life follows nowhere. If your mind points toward noise, your energy drains into noise. If your mind points toward what weakens you, your strength dissolves. The predator of distraction only wins when the blade has no direction. Mentalism gives it that direction again. But here is the truth almost no one understands. You cannot focus without first declaring where your mind must point. Intention is not optional. It is the root of clarity. Your mind is not a passive observer. It is the fulcrum of your entire vibrational field. When your thought becomes coherent, your emotions follow. When your emotions follow, your behavior aligns. When your behavior aligns, your dementalism is not about positive thinking. It is about setting the angle of the blade, the mental vector through which your energy organizes itself. Right now, your attention is scattered because your intention is undefined. A mind without direction becomes prey to every impulse, every flicker, every interruption, every micro-distraction. But a mind with direction activates a force that few people ever truly touch, the field of inner gravity. When the mind chooses one direction with clarity, everything else becomes irrelevant. Not by force, by resonance. Because whatever is not aligned with your intention simply falls away. This is why you must perform the first act of restoration. Sit with yourself, right now or later tonight, and declare in one sentence the direction of your mind for the next cycle. Not a goal, not a wish, not a vague desire. A direction, clear, sharp, undeniable. Something like, for the next cycle, my mind cuts only toward clarity. My attention returns to what strengthens me. I choose one task and dissolve everything else. Because when you name the direction, you sharpen the blade. When you sharpen the blade, the predator retreats. When the predator retreats, the labyrinth begins to open. This is mentalism in practice. You set the vector. Reality follows the vector. Your mind reconfigures to match the vector. And slowly, quietly, your strength returns. The world will not change because you want it to. It will change because you became aligned with the law that shapes it. But before we move to the next code, ask yourself, where must your mind point for your life to realign? And are you willing to declare it aloud? The next block unlocks the second Hermetic code, rhythm, the pulse that restores consistency, stamina, and inner force. But the door only opens when you choose your direction. If the direction of your mind became clear as you listened, mark this moment. Tap subscribe now, not as a gesture of habit, but as a declaration of alignment. It tells the algorithm of your consciousness and this temple that you are choosing coherence over chaos. Once the mind chooses a direction, a quiet shift begins. Your thoughts start aligning. Your energy stops leaking. Your intention regains weight. But even with mentalism activated, there is a force that determines whether your clarity becomes strength or dissolves again into fragmentation. That force is rhythm. The Hermetic texts describe rhythm as the invisible tide governing every movement in existence. Breath, emotion, attention, hunger, creativity, sleep, desire, action, collapse, renewal. Everything life touches moves in waves. Everything you feel rises and falls. Everything you attempt follows a cycle. And here lies the truth few seekers ever understand. Your focus is not a constant. It is a pulse, a wave, a living movement. You lose yourself when you resist this movement, when you expect your mind to be sharp every hour, every moment, every day, when you demand constancy from a consciousness designed to oscillate. The modern world manipulates this misunderstanding. It tells you to be always on, always productive, always available, forcing your inner rhythm into unnatural speed, unnatural tension, unnatural fragmentation. But the Hermetic law of rhythm reveals the opposite. True strength does not come from staying constant. It comes from mastering your cycle. When you flow with your rhythm, you gain stamina. When you fight your rhythm, you lose power. When you know your rhythm, you become unshakable. And here is where the restoration of your inner blade takes its next step. The practice. The Hermetic focus cycle, 40-10. This is the simplest and most powerful way to realign your mental field with your natural oscillations. 40 minutes of directed focus, 10 minutes of conscious release. Not forced, not guilt-driven, not mechanical, but coherent, because here is what this cycle really does. The 40 minutes sharpen the blade. The 10 minutes cool the metal so it does not warp. The oscillation between both awakens your inner force. Most people destroy their focus because they try to live in the 40 forever, pushing, forcing, driving themselves past their rhythm until the blade burns and bends. Others live constantly in the 10, never entering depth, never activating power, always drifting. But you are here to remember the movement that restores power. Not too much, not too little. Rhythm. When you align your work, your presence, your creativity, and even your rest with a natural pulse, something extraordinary begins to happen. Your mind stops fighting itself. Your energy stops evaporating. Your attention becomes predictable, stable, grounded. You become someone who finishes what they start. You become someone whose presence carries weight. You become someone who does not waver. And beneath everything, a deeper transformation takes place. Your consciousness becomes self-governing again, not ruled by exhaustion, not ruled by impulse, not ruled by noise, but ruled by rhythm. Because rhythm is not a small detail in your life. It is the cycle through which your power returns. Tonight, as you work, study, create, or deepen your personal practice, try it. 40 minutes of sharp direction, 10 minutes of deliberate release. Let the blade heat and cool, heat and cool, heat and cool, until you feel something ancient returning. A steadiness, a stamina, a clarity you forgot you once had. Mentalism gives the blade its angle. Rhythm gives the blade its strength. And with these two codes activated, you are no longer fragile. You are no longer scattered. You are no longer prey. You are awakening. Next, we step into the third Hermetic Code, Causality. The strike, the impact, the act that turns your intention into tangible reality. But before we cross that threshold, ask yourself, do you know your rhythm? Or have you been living against it? Because a blade without a pulse cannot cut through your destiny. There comes a moment in every inner journey where understanding is no longer enough. A moment when the mind, no matter how aligned, no matter how rhythmic, must step into action, or everything collapses back into dream. Mentalism gives direction, rhythm gives stamina, but without the third code, without causality, the law of the precise strike, your power remains potential, never embodied. This is the turning point. This is where the Hermetic path stops being philosophy and becomes force, because the universe is not moved by intention alone. The universe bends, shifts, reorganizes, and responds to the causes you generate, the signals you send, the actions you commit, the choices you embody. Every moment of your life, consciously or unconsciously, you are striking the field of reality, and the field always strikes back. You are not simply living inside the world. You are constantly shaping it. The Hermetic law of cause and effect is often misunderstood as karma, or fate, or cosmic balance. But in its operative form, the form the initiates actually used, it is far simpler and far more powerful. Every action is a vibration. Every vibration sets a chain in motion. Every chain becomes a destiny. You are not experiencing random outcomes. You are experiencing the echo of your own inner state. Your fractured focus created fractured results. Your scattered energy created scattered timelines. Your hesitation created delayed outcomes. Your inaction created stagnation. Your unconscious impulses created realities you never consciously chose. And now you are here, awakening to the truth that the blade returns to power only when it strikes. Not wildly, not desperately, not compulsively, but with precision, with clarity, with intention. Because here is the revelation that few people ever see. One precise cause can undo 1,000 unconscious effects. One aligned action can reorganize years of chaos. One decision made with presence can change the architecture of your entire life. Causality is the Hermetic code that transforms inner force into outer reality. It bridges the invisible and the visible. It translates thought into movement. It turns energy into manifestation. When you understand this, something shifts in your perception. The world stops looking like a storm and starts looking like a mirror. Every outcome becomes a reflection of a cause you once set in motion. Every disappointment becomes a signature of an action you delayed. Every success becomes evidence of a moment where you showed up fully, precisely, intentionally. This is why the greatest initiates were not known for their thoughts. They were known for their acts. Not many, not constant, but decisive. They knew that a single conscious strike, a single aligned cause, could alter the trajectory of an entire lifetime. And now, you are ready to do the same. This ritual is simple, but its power is immense. It is the embodiment of the third Hermetic code. Choose one action today, just one, that aligns with the direction you named in mentalism and the rhythm you reclaimed in the 40-10 cycle. Not 5 tasks, not 10 goals, not a list designed to impress your ego. Just one. One action that carries weight. One action that cuts through the noise. One action that will echo through tomorrow. It might be writing a single paragraph, clearing a single space, finishing a task you've avoided, sending one message, completing one cycle, taking one step that reclaims your power. Whatever it is, it must be aligned, intentional, and unavoidable. Because in Hermetic practice, the blade grows sharper every time you strike in the direction of your truth, and it grows dull every time you hesitate. This is why your life has felt stuck at times, not because you lacked power, but because you generated no causes strong enough to reshape your reality. You thought the universe would move from thought alone, but the universe responds to impact, not imagination. And here is the hidden secret. The first aligned cause you set today will ripple into places you cannot yet see. It will strengthen your rhythm. It will sharpen your focus. It will attract opportunities that match your new frequency. It will close doors that once drained you. It will open doors that only a precise mind can walk through. Because once you strike, the field must respond. It cannot ignore you. It cannot resist you. It cannot deny the vibration you generated. You are no longer drifting. You are no longer dissolving. You are no longer prey to the invisible predator. You are becoming a force, one that shapes reality instead of being shaped by it. The next block will weave the 3 codes into a single ritual, creating the internal forge where the blade is truly reborn. But before we step into that fire, breathe and ask yourself, what is the one cause you will generate today to prove to your destiny that you are awake? Because destiny does not wait. Destiny responds. There is a moment in every ritual where the initiate realizes something undeniable. Transformation is not intellectual. Awakening is not conceptual. Clarity is not philosophical. It is forged. Forged in repetition. Forged in presence. Forged in the heat between your intention and your action. Forged in the space where your old identity fractures and the new one begins to breathe. Up until now, you have awakened 3 dormant forces inside you. Mentalism, the direction of the blade. Rhythm, the pulse of the blade. Causality, the strike of the blade. But these forces on their own are fragments. They are sparks. They are notes without harmony. To become power, real inner power, they must fuse. Fuse into a single movement. Fuse into a living practice. Fuse into an identity that does not collapse at the first sign of chaos. This fusion happens here, in the inner forge, and it starts with recognizing a truth most seekers resist. If you do not integrate your codes, the world will integrate them for you. If you do not choose your direction, the world assigns you one. If you do not honor your rhythm, the world will hijack it. If you do not generate your causes, the world will feed you its effects. This is why integration is not optional. It is survival, not physical survival, sovereignty survival, the survival of your inner architecture, the survival of your clarity, the survival of your inner command. And the forge requires fire, not literal fire, but the fire of conscious repetition, the fire of returning to the ritual even when you feel tired, distracted, overwhelmed, or pulled by forces that want to dismantle your presence. Because consistency is not about never failing, it is about returning faster every time you do. So let us bring the codes together. Mentalism, name the direction. The blade cannot move if it does not know where it cuts. Rhythm, honor the cycle. The blade cannot stay sharp if you do not let it heat and cool. Causality, strike once with precision. The blade cannot influence reality unless it meets resistance. And when these 3 converge, something rare begins to happen inside you. Your mind becomes quiet without force. Your will becomes steady without tension. Your decisions become effortless because you no longer negotiate with yourself. You no longer search for motivation. You move from structure. You no longer wait for clarity. You carry clarity. You become someone who does not merely try. You become someone who executes. Someone who moves with the kind of inner gravity that cannot be borrowed, faked, or outsourced. Someone who carries a field, a presence, that others can feel without knowing why. This is the hidden purpose of the Hermetic Codes. They do not make you stronger. They reveal the strength that was already there. And as the forge expands inside you, as the codes begin to synchronize, an old identity begins to dissolve. The version of you that scattered, the version of you that hesitated, the version of you that abandoned itself at the slightest interruption, the version of you that lived with a dull blade. Let it go, let it fall, let it burn, because the you that is emerging now is not fragile, not lost, not overwhelmed, not fragmented. You are becoming precise. You are becoming rhythmic. You are becoming causal. You are becoming a force that shapes reality. instead of reacting to it. And in the next block, we will expand this integration into something even greater, a living field around you, a presence that reorganizes not only your mind, but your environment, your relationships, your path, and your future. But before we enter the final ascent, ask yourself quietly, are you ready to carry these codes into the world, not just into your thoughts? Because integration is not what you learn, it is what you become. If you felt these 3 codes merging inside you, make this moment a vow. Write in the comments a single sentence that only your future self will understand, not for validation, not for recognition, but as a private seal between you and your own becoming. Your words will crystallize the identity you are forging here. This is your silent oath, your entry into the inner forge. There is a moment, subtle yet undeniable, when the work you've done inside begins to reshape the world outside, not through force, not through effort, but through resonance. A sharp blade does not need to announce itself. Its precision is seen. Its clarity changes the air around it. And the same is true for a mind that has awakened from fragmentation. A mind, a mind, strengthened by rhythm. A mind activated by causality. When these codes begin to live through you, your entire field shifts. You stop leaking inner. You stop drifting toward what drains you. You stop abando. A new pattern begins. A quiet, powerful coherence that moves through every layer of your life. 1. Your work changes. Tasks that once felt overwhelming become simple, almost sacred. You no longer negotiate with your intentions. You execute them. You no longer approach your goals with emotional chaos. You approach them with direction. The friction dissolves, replaced by a sense of inevitability, as if reality is rearranging itself to meet you halfway. 2. Your relationships change. People feel your presence differently. You are no longer scattered when you speak, no longer fragmented when you listen, no longer drained by dynamics that once consumed you. Your energy field becomes structured, and others respond to that structure, some by stepping closer, others by stepping away. Both are signs of alignment. 3. Your environment changes. Clutter becomes intolerable. Chaos becomes visible. You begin to rearrange your external world to match the clarity you carry inside, not out of obsession, but out of resonance. Order outside becomes a reflection of order within. 4. Your time changes. You stop chasing. You stop rushing. You stop collapsing into exhaustion. The rhythm you once struggled to control becomes the rhythm your life naturally follows. Cycles replace chaos. Depth replaces distraction. Presence replaces panic. 5. Your identity changes. Slowly, quietly, without ceremony. You stop seeing yourself as someone who struggles to focus. You stop seeing yourself as someone who falls behind. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You become someone who moves with intention, someone who carries a pulse, someone who acts with precision. This transformation is not loud. It does not come with dramatic moments or cinematic breakthroughs. It arrives like sunrise, gradually at first, then suddenly undeniable. You catch yourself completing tasks that once intimidated you. You catch yourself staying present without fighting for it. You catch yourself returning to your direction after small distractions. You catch yourself making choices that strengthen you instead of weaken you. This is what it means to live with the awakened blade. To move through life not as a wanderer, not as a reactor, but as a creator, a conscious architect of your inner and outer reality. And here lies the greatest secret of expansion. The world does not change when you become stronger. The world changes when you become coherent. Coherence alters your posture. Coherence alters your decisions. Coherence alters the opportunities that find you. Coherence alters the way life responds to you. Because clarity is not just a personal feeling, it is a frequency that attracts what aligns with it and dissolves what does not. You begin to sense this in subtle ways. Doors that once remained closed open without resistance. Conversations that once drained you shift into depth. Ideas that once scattered themselves now land with precision. Habits that once fractured you lose their pull, and the world around you begins to feel navigable. Not easy, but navigable. Because navigation is not about comfort, it is about knowing where the blade points. As you walk with the awakened blade, you begin to understand the truth behind every Hermetic teaching. Power is not something you chase. Power is something you align with. And once you align, once you embody the codes, once you live in coherence, something extraordinary happens. Your life begins responding to you with the same precision you respond to it. This is expansion. This is the spiraling outward of your inner work. This is the moment where your transformation becomes a field strong enough to influence your path, your relationships, your time, your purpose, and eventually, your destiny. And in the final block, we seal this transformation, closing the loop, returning to the blade, anchoring the identity that was forged through this journey. But before we step into the final ascent, sit with one question. Now that your blade is awake, where will you aim it? If you felt this expansion moving through you, let your presence ripple outward. Tap, share, or send this video to one person who carries the same hunger for clarity. This is how seekers recognize each other, through resonance, not numbers. Your gesture may be the spark that awakens another blade, and every awakened blade strengthens the circle. Every journey that awakens something in you eventually arrives at a point of return. Not a return to the past, not a return to who you once were, but a return to the center, a return to the inner throne, a return to the self that waited behind the noise, the chaos, the hesitation, the fragmentation. You began this path with a dull blade, a mind that had forgotten its own sharpness, a presence dissolved by a world that demands everything while giving nothing, a focus scattered like light passing through broken glass, and yet, step by step through each code, something ancient began rising inside you. In mentalism, your direction returned. The blade remembered the angle from which it cuts reality. You remember that thought is not passive. It is the architect of everything you touch. In rhythm, your strength returned. You no longer demanded constancy from a consciousness built to pulse. You began moving with the tide instead of fighting against it. Your mind aligned with cycles older than civilization, older than language, older than memory itself. In causality, your impact returned. You no longer waited for your life to shift. You struck. You generated the cause that bends destiny. You remembered that reality is not something that happens to you. It is something that responds to you. And in integration, your identity returned. Not the identity shaped by exhaustion. Not the identity shaped by distraction. Not the identity shaped by survival. But the identity shaped by clarity. The identity that stands. The identity that chooses. The identity that acts. The identity that does not break. And now, in this final ascent, a deeper realization settles inside your chest. The blade was never the point. The blade was the mirror. What you sharpened during this journey was never metal. It was consciousness. It was will. It was presence. It was the part of you capable of cutting through illusions, removing what weakens you, and protecting what must never again be abandoned. You did not restore the blade. You restored the bearer. And that changes everything. Because with the blade awakened, you will move differently in the world. Your thoughts will carry weight. Your actions will carry direction. Your silence will carry presence. Your decisions will carry consequence. Your field will carry coherence. People will feel it. Environments will shift around it. Obstacles that once overwhelmed you will now bend beneath your focus. Not because life became easier, but because you became aligned. A sharp blade is never just sharp. It is sovereign. And that is who you are becoming. But there is one final mystery, one last truth the Hermetic path reveals. A blade only stays sharp if it keeps moving. Stagnation dulls, silence dulls, forgetting dulls, returning to old patterns dulls. Letting the world decide your direction dulls. The journey does not end here, it begins here, because everything you've restored, your direction, your rhythm, your cause, will only solidify if you continue walking the path. And the next step, the continuation of this initiation, is already waiting for you. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, literally, in the next portal, the next code, the next layer of the same spiral you entered tonight. The blade is awake. Now it must be wielded. So breathe deeply for a moment. Feel the weight of what you restored. Feel the clarity resting beneath your ribs. Feel the presence rising through your spine. Feel the identity that is no longer becoming, but beginning. And ask yourself, if your blade is sharp again, what world will you carve with it? If you reach this final threshold, you are no longer a viewer. You are a bearer of the blade. In the pinned comment, a new portal is waiting for you. Not a continuation, an ascension. Enter it while your clarity is alive, because once the blade awakens, the path does not close, it calls.